Dante Bellondi opened the wrong door at exactly 7:38 p.m. The private corridor outside the grand ballroom was quiet. Too quiet for a night when the richest people in San Francisco were gathered beneath chandeliers, raising glasses to sick children and pretending charity made them clean. Music drifted through the walls. Camera flashes flickered beneath the cracks of closed doors. Somewhere below, 200 people waited for Dante to walk onto a stage and thank them for their generosity. But Dante did not reach the stage. He reached a wardrobe room. He turned the brass handle, stepped inside, and saw the one thing Lena Harper had spent months hiding. She stood near the mirror with her back half turned, a stained ivory blouse slipping from one shoulder. A clean black silk shirt clutched against her chest. Her hair had come loose from its careful twist, dark strands falling against the side of her face. The room smelled faintly of spilled wine, expensive perfume, and fear. At first, Dante saw only her reflection. Then he saw the bruises. One curved around her upper arm in the shape of fingers. Another darkened the side of her ribs, just visible beneath the edge of her blouse. A third spread across the back of her shoulder, faded yellow at the edges. The kind of bruise that had begun healing, only to be joined by something newer. Dante stopped breathing. Elena froze. Their eyes met in the mirror. Not like a boss and his secretary, not like a man and a woman caught in an accidental moment of intimacy. Like two people standing over a secret that had finally started bleeding through the floor. Dante turned away instantly. His hand remained on the door handle. His jaw tightened so violently, a muscle moved beneath his cheek. He stared at the dark wood paneling outside the room, refusing to look at her exposed skin again, refusing to become another man who took from her simply because a door had been opened. "Forgive me," he said, his voice low. "Too controlled. Too dangerous. I was told my cufflinks were in here." Behind him, fabric moved quickly. Elena's breath caught once, then disappeared, behind the perfect professional silence she wore, better than any designer dress. "It's fine as Mr. Bellondi," she said. That voice. Dante hated that voice. It was the one she used when donors insulted her and she pretended not to hear. The one she used when board members snapped their fingers for files. The one she used when she had worked 18 hours and still asked if he needed anything else. Calm. Useful. Invisible. "I should have locked the door," she added. Dante did not turn around. The charity gala downstairs had already begun. In 18 minutes, he was supposed to give a speech about hope. In 28 minutes, Dr. Julian Cross would be honored as the miracle surgeon of State 3, Aurelia Children's Hospital. In 40 minutes, Julian would place a hand on Lena Harper's waist in front of every camera in the room and call her his future wife. Dante had known about the engagement for 6 weeks. He had told himself it changed nothing. Elena was his secretary. She had chosen another man. Dante Bellondi did not reach for women who belonged to someone else. Not because he lacked hunger, because he had too much power. And power ruined love when it was held by careless hands. So he had stayed away. He stayed away when Elena brought him coffee at midnight without asking, because she remembered he forgot meals during violent weeks. He stayed away when she left pain medication on his desk after a meeting with the Morano family ended with a bullet hole in his sleeve. He stayed away when rainstorms hit San Francisco, and he sent a car to her apartment, calling it company policy. Though no other employee in the building had ever received that policy. He stayed away when she smiled at his dry humor like she could see the man underneath the Bellondi name. And when she came to work wearing Julian Cross's ring, Dante had closed 3 meetings early, stood in his office overlooking the bay, and stared at the city like it had betrayed him personally. He had said nothing, because silence, he thought, was the only honorable thing left. But now he had seen the bruises. And silence no longer felt honorable. It felt like complicity. I slipped, Elena said behind him. The lie arrived too quickly, too cleanly, too practiced. Dante's fingers tightened around the handle. Stairs don't leave fingerprints. The room went still. For a moment. He heard only the distant string quartet from the ballroom and the soft hum of the tower's ventilation system. Then Elena's voice came again. Smaller now. Please don't do this. Do what? Look at me like it hurts you too. The words cut through him with such precision that Dante closed his eyes, because it did hurt. It hurt in a place he had thought long dead. He heard her finish buttoning the blouse. He heard the careful inhale she took before opening the door wider behind him. You can turn around now, she said. Dante turned slowly. Elena stood fully dressed in the black silk shirt, her sleeves buttoned at the wrists, her collar high enough to hide the mark near her shoulder. Her hair was pinned again. Her face was calm, too calm. Only her eyes betrayed her. They always had. Elena's eyes were the reason Dante knew she hated gala speeches, though she wrote them beautifully. They were the reason he knew she preferred tea, but drank coffee during overtime because it kept him from noticing she was tired. They were the reason he knew she was kind, even when she pretended not to be. Tonight, her eyes held fear. Beneath it was something worse. Resignation. Who did this to you? Dante asked. No one you can punish. A dangerous stillness entered him. Try me. Elena looked toward the hallway, where warm gold light leaked from the ballroom doors. Applause rose in the distance, polished and empty. You can punish him, she whispered. He's downstairs being honored by your charity. Dante did not ask who. He already knew. Dr. Julian Cross, the city's favorite surgeon. The man whose face smiled from hospital billboards. The man donors called a saint. The man who spoke softly enough to comfort grieving mothers and wore white coats like a halo. The man who had put a ring on Elena Harper's finger. Did Julian do this? Dante asked. Elena's mouth tightened. I have work to do. She stepped past him. Dante moved back immediately, refusing to block her. He would not become another locked door in her life. But as she reached the threshold, he spoke. If you walk out there beside him tonight, I will not stop you. She paused. Thank you. But I will find out the truth. Her shoulders stiffened. No. The word was sharp, panicked, nothing like the careful woman who organized his world. You can investigate him. I can investigate anyone. Not him. Why? Elena turned back. For 1 second. The mask shattered completely. Dante saw the woman beneath it, exhausted, terrified, furious, and still trying to protect someone more than herself. Because if Julian falls, she said, Mason may die. The name landed between them like a blade. Dante knew Mason Harper was her brother. 11 years old. Pediatric cardiac patient. Elena rarely spoke about him. But when she did, her voice softened in ways Dante had memorized against his will. Explain, he said. Elena swallowed. Julian controls his case. His surgery list. His medication grants. His transfer approval. The foundation support. Everything. Mason has a congenital heart condition. He needs surgery. And if Julian decides the paperwork needs review, if he decides funding has to pause, if he decides I'm unstable or uncooperative. Her voice broke once. Only once. Then she buried it. Mason disappears into the system. Dante's rage did not flare. It focused. He told you this. Men like Julian don't threaten like villains in movies, she said with a hollow little laugh. They remind you softly. They say board decisions are complicated. They say some children have been waiting longer. They say it would be terrible if emotional stress affected my ability to make responsible choices. Dante stared at her. And you were going to marry him. I was going to survive him until Mason was safe. That is not marriage. Her eyes lifted to his. Neither is pretending you don't care while sending me cars in the rain. The silence after that was different. It was alive. For months, their feelings had moved between them in quiet gestures. Closed doors. Almost smiles. Careful distance. Dante had never named it because he feared his world would turn tenderness into a weapon. Now he saw the brutal irony. His restraint had not saved her. It had left her alone with a man who understood exactly how to weaponize love. I cared too much to make you another woman trapped by a powerful man, Dante said. Elena, says Sean, and I was already trapped by one. Before Dante could answer, the ballroom doors opened. Celeste Arden swept into the corridor wearing emerald satin and a smile sharp enough to draw blood. She was the chairwoman of the Stank Percent, Aurelia Foundation, daughter of a senator, patron saint of wealthy guilt, and Julian Cross, S., most useful shield. Behind her stood a young assistant holding a tablet, the same assistant, Dante guessed, who had spilled wine down Elena's blouse 20 minutes earlier. There you are, Celeste said warmly. Though her gaze flicked from Elena's blouse to Dante's face and then to the wardrobe room behind them. The donors are getting restless. Doctor, Cross is asking for his fiancée. Elena's fingers curled once at her side. Dante noticed. Celeste noticed him noticing. Her smile widened. Is everything all right? Perfectly. Elena answered before Dante could speak. I'll bring Doctor. Cross to the stage. Celeste's gaze lowered to Elena's ring. Good. He prefers you close during public moments. The sentence sounded harmless. It felt like poison. Elena nodded and walked past them toward the ballroom. Dante watched her go. Every protective instinct in him straining against discipline. Celeste lingered. She's delicate, she said lightly. Brilliant assistant. Of course, but emotional. Julian has been very patient with her. Dante looked at her. Has he? You know how women can be when they come from difficult backgrounds. Grateful one moment, resentful the next. Julian saved her brother's life. Or close enough. Sometimes gratitude becomes confusion. Dante's voice dropped. Be careful. Celeste. Her smile stiffened. Of what? Speaking to me as if I confuse cruelty with charity. Then he left her standing there and entered the ballroom. The grand hall of Belandi Tower glittered beneath crystal chandeliers. White roses climbed marble columns. Champagne flowed near a fountain shaped like an angel. Screens along the wall showed children smiling in hospital beds. Surgeons in blue gowns. Donors shaking hands. Headlines praising the saint. Aurelia Foundation for Miracles. Money could apparently purchase. The guests wore diamonds in sympathy. Dante had hosted enough charity events to know wealthy people loved generosity most when photographers were present. Near the stage, Julian Cross stood surrounded by donors. Tall, handsome, silver-brown hair perfectly arranged, tuxedo immaculate, smile gentle enough to lower anyone's guard. He looked like a man designed by public trust. When Elena approached, Julian's smile softened for the cameras. Privately, his thumb pressed into her upper arm, exactly where the bruise hid beneath silk. Elena's mouth did not move, but Dante saw the tiny change in her breathing. Julian leaned close and kissed her cheek. There you are, he murmured. Dante was too far to hear the words, but he read the shape of them on Julian's mouth. You changed too slowly. Elena stared forward. The spill took time to clean. "You should be more careful," Julian said. "People are watching." "I know." "Good girl." Dante felt murder rise behind his ribs. Rocco Vane appeared at his side. Broad-shouldered, silent, loyal for 15 years. "Boss, I need everything on Julian Cross." Rocco did not blink. The surgeon. Every complaint. Every lawsuit that vanished. Every nurse who resigned without explanation. Every patient file his signature controls. Especially Mason Harper. Rocco's gaze shifted briefly to Elena. He understood more than most because he listened better than he spoke. "Quietly," Rocco asked. "So quietly the dead will envy you." "And if he's clean?" Dante watched Julian place his hand at Elena's lower back, guiding her toward the stage like she was something he owned. "He isn't." Rocco disappeared. Dante moved through the crowd, accepting handshakes, refusing conversations, letting old men praise the generosity of the Belandi family while his attention remained on Elena. He saw how she stood beside Julian with perfect posture, how she smiled when donors spoke, how she angled her body away from Julian's touch without making it obvious, how Julian performed tenderness when cameras turned and applied pressure when they turned away. The performance was flawless. That was what made it monstrous. On stage, Celeste introduced the evening. She spoke of hope, healing, innovation, and children saved by collective compassion. Her voice trembled in all the right places. The crowd leaned in, hungry for the feeling of goodness. Then she invited Julian to speak. Applause swelled. Julian took Elena's hand and drew her up with him. She did not resist. Dante saw the hesitation she swallowed. He saw the courage it took to stand under bright lights beside the man who had marked her body and threatened her brother with bureaucracy. Julian smiled at the audience. "Every child deserves a chance," he began. "Every family deserves hope." Elena's face remained composed, but pain flickered through her eyes. "Some of you know my work through the operating room," Julian continued. "Some through the foundation, but tonight, I want to honor someone who has taught me the private meaning of hope. My future wife, Lena Harper." The room applauded. Cameras turned. Elena's fingers tightened around the program card in her hand. "When I met Elena," Julian said, "she was carrying the weight of her little brother's illness almost entirely alone. I was humbled by her strength, honored by her trust, and grateful every day that she allowed me to help." Dante's jaw hardened. Elena looked like a woman being buried under compliments. Julian lifted her hand and kissed the ring. "Soon she will be my wife. And together, we will continue fighting for children like Mason." The applause grew louder. Dante did not clap. Elena glanced down for one brief second. Then her eyes found his. It was not a plea. It was apology. As if she regretted that he had to witness her humiliation. As if his pain was another burden she had to manage. Dante wanted to cross the ballroom, take the microphone from Julian, and expose him with nothing but instinct. Instead, he stayed still. Because Elena had said Julian thought he had already won. Careless men revealed themselves when victory made them comfortable. The hospital video began. Donors dabbed their eyes. Celeste looked moved for the cameras. Julian placed his hand at Elena's waist and held her there while screens showed children thanking him by name. Then Elena did something almost too small to notice. She shifted the program card and folded the top corner twice. Left. Right. Then she pressed it flat with her thumb. Dante's eyes narrowed. He had seen that signal once before during a merger negotiation. Elena had noticed two versions of a contract with different page counts. She said nothing in the room. She simply folded a corner and saved him from signing a poison pill. Discrepancy. Dante looked toward the screen. At the bottom of the donor list, one name appeared twice. Haldren Medical Logistics. Haldren Medical Logistics. A single letter changed. A shell variation. A mistake. No. Elena had found something. Julian finished his speech to thunderous applause. Elena stepped down first, and Dante met her near the side corridor before Julian could reclaim her. The duplicate name, Dante said. Her lips barely moved. You saw it. Tell me. Not here. Elena. She glanced toward Julian, who was shaking hands with Senator Arden. Heldren isn't a donor, she whispered. It's tied to transplant transport records. The misspelled version appears in internal payment logs. How do you know that? Because I copied the logs. Dante stared at her. The woman he thought was only trapped had been moving through the cage with a blade hidden in her sleeve. When? 3 nights ago. Her voice dropped. That's why he hurt me. Dante's control thinned. You have proof. Partial. Not enough. He caught me before I got the full archive. Where is it? Safe. Good. No. She whispered. Not good. He knows I have something. He doesn't know how much. Tonight he's logging into the Foundation archive after the award presentation to show the board donor projections. That archive contains the original treatment priority lists. The real lists. Elena nodded. Children moved down for donors. Children moved up for money. Mason's file marked conditional under my name. Conditional on what? She looked at him then, and all the pain she had hidden all night gathered in her face. My compliance. Before Dante could answer, Julian appeared behind her. There you are. Elena turned. Julian smiled at Dante, as if nothing in the world could touch him. Mr. Belandi, he said. A generous event. The hospital will remember this. Will it? Dante asked. Julian's smile remained. For years. His hand moved toward Elena's back. Dante shifted slightly. Not between them fully, just enough that Julian's hand stopped in the air. A small movement, but the temperature changed. Julian's eyes flickered. Elena's breath caught. Your speech was moving, Dante said. Hope is a powerful business. Julian's smile thinned. Not a business. A calling. Everything is a business to men who keep ledgers. Julian's fingers curled. You would know more about ledgers than I do. Dante almost smiled. Yes. Celeste appeared quickly, sensing the edge but not the cause. Gentlemen, the auction is beginning. Julian, the board wants you near the presentation table. Julian looked at Elena. Come with me. It sounded like a request. It was not. Elena hesitated for one heartbeat. Dante saw it. Julian saw Dante see it. Jealousy moved across Julian's perfect face like a crack beneath glass. Unless Mr. Belandi needs you, Julian added softly. Elena lowered her eyes. Il come. She walked away with him. Dante watched them go. Rocco returned moments later. Faccia grim. You were right. How bad? 3 nurses resigned in 2 years after filing complaints that never reached the board. One former fiancé signed a non-disclosure agreement and left California. 2 patient families accused him of changing treatment access after they questioned foundation fees. All buried. By Celeste? Her office signed the internal dismissals. Mason Harper. Rocco hesitated. His file is tied directly to Cross. NFR. Funding approved quarterly through his department. There's a note attached. Dante did not blink. Say it. Guardian cooperation essential to continued discretionary support. The words were dressed like policy. They smelled like extortion. Dante looked toward the presentation table, where Julian unlocked his tablet with a fingerprint while donors leaned in to watch projected charts. "Get into the archive," Dante said. Rocco grimaced. "Server is locked through Cross-S tablet. We need access while he's logged in." "Elena already knows that. She told you. She's been fighting him longer than we have." Rocco looked toward Elena with new respect. "Then we follow her lead." Dante's eyes stayed on her. "For once, yes." At the presentation table, Julian spoke about impact metrics and surgical outcomes. Elena stood beside him, close enough to observe, close enough to tremble, close enough to be punished if she made one wrong move. Then she picked up the silver pen beside the guest ledger. Click, click, pause, click, pause, click, click, click. It looked like nerves. It was not. Dante turned to Rocco. 213. Rocco related to Marco in security. Try 213 as the archive segment key. 30 seconds later, Rocco's phone buzzed. His eyes lifted. "We in the outer layer." Dante felt something like pride cut through the rage. Elena had given them the first door. Across the room, Julian stopped speaking. His gaze lowered to his tablet. A notification had appeared. Not obvious to anyone else, but Dante saw the shift in his posture. Julian knew someone had touched the system. His head rose slowly. His gaze found Elena. For the first time all evening, the saint looked at her like the monster underneath had forgotten the cameras. Elena went pale. "Elena." Julian smiled again. But this time the smile was for her alone. He leaned close to her ear. Dante read his lips. "What did you do?" Elena did not answer. Julian's fingers closed around her wrist. Lightly enough for the crowd, hard enough for her bones. Dante moved. Rocco caught his arm. "Boss." "Not yet." He is touching her. And Marco is inside the server. 30 seconds. Those 30 seconds stretched like years. Julian kept smiling at donors while holding Elena's wrist. Elena did not cry out. She did not pull away. She looked across the room at Dante and gave the smallest shake of her head. Not yet. She was telling him not yet. Dante hated her courage because it required her pain. Then Marco's message arrived on Rocco's phone. Inside. Downloading. A second later, the ballroom screens went black. A murmur moved through the crowd. Celeste snapped at a technician. Julian released Elena's wrist and looked toward the projection booth. Then a new image appeared on every screen in the room. Security footage. Elena entering a restricted archive office at night. Elena opening a drawer. Elena removing a flash drive. Elena transferring money into an account under her name. Gasps rose around the ballroom. Celeste turned with practiced horror. "Oh my God." Julian stepped back from Elena, as if wounded by betrayal. His performance began instantly. "Elena," he said, voice soft enough to sound devastated. "Tell me this isn't true." Elena stared at the screen, stunned. The footage was real enough to be dangerous and false enough to destroy her. She had entered the archive. Yes, but the money transfer was fake. The drawer was staged. The timestamps had been altered. Julian had prepared this. He had known she might try something tonight, and he had built a trap inside her escape. Around them, donors whispered. Board members stared. Senator Arden's face hardened. Celeste moved toward Elena, voice low and cold. "Ms. Harper, you need to come with me before this becomes uglier." Julian reached for the microphone with the sorrowful expression of a man forced to expose the woman he loved. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, Elena has been under extraordinary emotional strain. Her brother's illness, the stress of our engagement, certain obsessive attachments she has formed at work. His eyes flicked to Dante just long enough for the room to feel the implication. I had hoped to handle this privately. Elena's face drained of color. This was her nightmare. Not that Julian would hurt her in private, that she would tell the truth. And he would make the world call her unstable before the first sentence left her mouth. Julian continued. She accessed confidential foundation files and moved money through accounts connected to her name. I believe she needs help, not condemnation. The crowd murmured with pity now. And pity was worse than hatred because pity did not listen. Elena stood alone beneath the screens, her bruises hidden again, her truth buried beneath a perfect man's concern. Then Dante stepped forward. The room quieted before he reached the stage. Julian turned to him with a sad smile. Dante, I know this is uncomfortable. She works for you. Perhaps you missed signs we at the hospital have been managing for some time. Dante took the microphone from his hand. Not aggressively, not dramatically. He simply held out his hand. And Julian, conditioned by the room's expectation that powerful men cooperate in public, released it. Dante looked at Elena first. Not with pity, not with doubt, with certainty. Then he turned to the crowd. Doctor, Cross is right about one thing, Dante said. This has been managed for some time. Julian's smile faltered, but not by Elena Harper. The ballroom went silent. Celeste's expression sharpened. Dante looked up at the screen, still showing the doctored footage. Someone prepared this accusation before tonight. Someone expected Ms. Harper to become inconvenient. Someone needed all of you to believe she was unstable before you asked why a private secretary knew enough to threaten a surgeon, a foundation chairwoman, and a hospital board. Julian laughed softly. That is a serious claim. Dante looked at him. Then you should be careful how many lies you tell while my people trace the source. For the first time, fear flickered across Julian Cross's perfect face. Rocco appeared near the projection booth, phone to his ear, eyes locked on Dante. He gave one sharp nod. The trace had found something. Elena saw it too. Her knees almost weakened with relief. Then Julian moved. Not toward Dante, toward her. Fast enough to look like concern. Hard enough that she knew what was coming. His hand closed around her bruised wrist in front of everyone. Elena, he said through his teeth, still smiling. Come with me now. Pain flashed up her arm. Dante's voice cut through the room. Let her go. Julian's grip tightened. She is my fiancée. Elena lifted her head. Something changed in her face then. The fear did not vanish, but it stopped leading. She looked at Julian, at the man who had used her brother. Her silence, her bruises, her reputation, and finally her own kindness against her. Then she looked at Dante, not for rescue, for permission to stop pretending. Dante saw the question in her eyes and answered without words. He stepped back half a pace. He gave her the stage. Elena turned toward the microphone in Dante's hand. Her voice shook, but it lived. No, she said. I am not your fiancé because I chose you. I am your fiancé because you made my brother's treatment the price of leaving. A sound moved through the crowd. Julian's hand froze on her wrist. Elena kept going. And I am not unstable. I am not confused. I am not stealing from your foundation. I found the files you buried. I found the children you delayed. I found the donors you rewarded. And 3 nights ago, when you caught me copying proof, you put these bruises on my body and told me no one would believe a secretary over a man who saves children. Julian's face twisted. Enough. He yanked her wrist. Dante caught his hand. The movement was clean, controlled, and final. Julian tried to pull free, but Dante's grip did not move. The entire ballroom watched the famous surgeon's mask crack. Dante leaned in, voice low enough for the first rows to hear. "You will never touch her again." Then the screens behind them changed. The doctored footage vanished. In its place appeared a hospital file marked Harper, Mason. Beneath it, guardian cooperation essential to continued discretionary support. Then another file. Treatment priority adjustments. Donor-linked approvals. Internal complaints dismissed by Celeste Arden's office. Names. Dates. Signatures. The ballroom erupted. Celeste shouted for the screens to be shut off. Senator Arden stood. Julian stared at the evidence. Then at Elena. Hatred bare now. "You stupid girl," he has said. "You think this saves him? You think this saves your brother?" Before Elena could answer, Rocco's voice came through Dante's earpiece. "Boss, hospital security just reported unauthorized access to Mason Harper's room." Dante's blood turned to ice. Elena saw the change in his face and knew instantly. "Mason," she whispered. Rocco's voice came again. Sharper now. A transfer team entered with foundation credentials. They were trying to move him. Julian smiled. Not the public smile. The real one. Elena did not scream. The sound that came out of her was smaller than a scream. Weaker than a cry. The kind of broken breath a person makes when fear goes too deep for the body to know what to do with it. "Mason," she whispered again. The whole ballroom, with its chandeliers and roses and cameras and champagne, disappeared from her mind as if none of it had ever mattered. She ran. Pain shot through her ribs with each step, but she ran anyway, clutching her phone. One hand pressed to her side like she could hold herself together until she reached her brother. "Elena." Julian called after her, his voice still wearing concern for the crowd. "You're not thinking clearly." Dante turned to him. For the first time that evening, the polished surgeon stepped back. "Say her name again," Dante said, "and I will forget how many cameras are in this room." Julian's face tightened. "Threatening me won't save the boy." The microphone was still on. The sentence carried through the ballroom. Every whisper died. Julian realized it too late. Elena stopped near the side exit, one hand on the doorframe, and looked back. The whole room looked at Julian now. Not as a saint, not as a surgeon, but as a man who had just called a sick child leverage in front of 200 witnesses. Celeste went pale. Dante's eyes stayed on Julian. "Thank you," he said quietly. "That was the first honest thing you've said tonight." Then he looked at Rocco. "Lock the building. No one leaves with a wiped phone, a broken tablet, or a deleted file. Oh, send every recording to Marco, our federal contact, and Dr. Naomi Pierce. Now." Julian's expression shifted at the name. "Naomi Pierce has no authority in my hospital." "She does now." Elena could not wait another second. She ran into the private corridor. Dante followed. Behind them, the ballroom exploded into chaos. But Dante did not look back. Power meant nothing if it arrived too late. The private elevator took 17 seconds to arrive. Elena knew because she counted each one like a prayer. Her phone shook in her hand as she called Mason's room. No answer. She called again. No answer. The elevator doors opened and she rushed inside. Dante entered behind her. Rocco followed last. Phone pressed to his ear. "Security is delaying them," Rocco said. "But the transfer order is real. Signed under Cross's authority. It says Mason is being moved because his guardian is under investigation for theft and instability. Elena turned so fast her loose hair struck her cheek. He can do that. He already did, Rocco said. But they haven't left the floor. The elevator began to descend. Elena pressed both hands to her mouth. Dante stood beside her, close but not touching. That restraint nearly destroyed her. If he had grabbed her, she could have fought. If he had told her to calm down, she could have hated him. But he simply stood there. Ready? Terrifyingly still, letting her fear exist without trying to own it. Elena, he said. She shook her head. Don't look at me. If he hurts Mason, he will not leave that hospital with your brother. A laugh broke out of her, sharp with pain. You don't understand. Julian doesn't have to touch him. He signs papers. He changes codes. He tells nurses I am unstable. He says words like protocol and liability. And suddenly, I'm outside a locked door, begging to see the only family I have left. Then tonight, Dante said, we remove his words from the system. You can fix 4 years in one night. No, he said, but I can make sure he never gets another one. The elevator opened into the underground garage. 3 black SUVs were already waiting. Engines running. Headlights burning white against polished concrete. Elena moved toward the nearest one, but her knees nearly gave out. Dante reached instinctively, then stopped before touching her. May I? The question landed in the middle of the emergency like a hand held over a wound. Elena looked at him, breathing hard. Then she nodded. Dante put one arm around her carefully, supporting her without pulling her into him, and guided her into the SUV. Rocco took the front seat. The driver pulled out before the door fully closed. San Francisco blurred outside the windows, silver and black and wet beneath winter rain. Elena kept calling Mason's room. Still no answer. Then her phone buzzed with a video call from an unknown number. She answered so quickly she nearly dropped it. Mason's face filled the screen. Pale. Frightened. Oxygen tube slightly crooked. He sat upright in bed, clutching the small stuffed fox Elena had bought from a thrift store after his first surgery. Behind him, voices argued in the hallway. Elena, he whispered. Her heart cracked. Mason, baby, where is your nurse? They said, I have to go. Who said? A lady with a blue folder. She said, you did something bad. And doctor, Julian has to protect me. Dante's hand curled into a fist on his knee. Elena forced her voice soft. Listen to me. You did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. Don't sign anything. Don, let them take your bracelet off. Don't let them move your bed unless Nurse Mara or Dr. Patel is there. Okay. Mason's lips trembled. Doctor, Julian said, if I fight, it makes you look worse. Elena closed her eyes. That was Julian's genius. He knew how to make fear sound like obedience. Mason, look at me. The boy's eyes lifted. Do you remember our rule? If someone says, I sent them, they have to know the code. What's the code tonight? Mason swallowed. Blue pancakes. Good. Did anyone say blue pancakes? He shook his head. Then, they were not for me. A faint strength returned to his face. Okay. The video shook as someone entered the room. A woman's voice said, Mason, sweetheart, we need to get you ready. Mason looked off screen. Do you know the code? Silence. Then the woman said, less sweetly, give me the phone. Mason pulled it to his chest. Elena sat forward. Do not touch him. The woman appeared on camera, polished and irritated beneath a mask of concern. Miss Harper, you are currently under review for unauthorized access to Foundation records. Dr. Cross has ordered a protective transfer. That is my brother. And until your status is clarified, the board must consider his best interests. His best interest is not being moved in the middle of a cardiac episode by people he doesn't know. Dante leaned into frame. His voice was quiet. What is your name? The woman faltered. I'm sorry. Who are you? The man whose security team is recording this call, whose lawyers are 3 minutes from your hospital administrator, and whose federal contact is already reviewing the transfer order you are holding. The woman's face changed. Mr. Belandi, I am following hospital procedure. No, Dante said. You are following a surgeon who has just been recorded threatening that child in front of witnesses. Step away from the bed. She looked off screen. More voices. Then Mason whispered, Elena, Nurse Mara is here. Relief hit Elena so hard she almost sobbed. Nurse Mara appeared. Broad-shouldered, calm-eyed, and furious, in the way good nurses became furious when powerful men played games with patients. Miss Harper, she said firmly. I'm with Mason. Dr. Patel is on his way. No one is moving him. Elena covered her mouth. Thank you. Get here safely. The call ended. Elena bent forward. Shaking, Dante wanted to touch her hair, her shoulder. Anything that would tell her she was not alone. He did not. He looked at Rocco instead. Where is Julian? Rocco listened through his earpiece. He left the ballroom through the service hall. Celeste delayed security. He's likely headed to the hospital. Of course he is, Elena whispered. Dante turned to her. Why would he go there himself? She wiped her face. When she looked up, fear had sharpened into understanding. Because the transfer failed, Mason is the last thing he controls. If he can get to him, he can still force me to recant. Would you? Elena looked out at the city lights rushing past the window. Yesterday, yes. Dante's chest tightened. And tonight, her voice came back stronger. Tonight he made the mistake of touching my brother in front of me. At State, Aurelia Children's Hospital. The lobby was in controlled chaos. Security guards stood near the elevators. Nurses whispered behind desks. A hospital administrator in a gray suit argued with Rocco's men and lost with every sentence. Elena stepped out of the SUV before it fully stopped. Dante moved with her. Every eye turned toward them. Elena hated the way people looked at her now. Not as a sister. Not as a woman. As a scandal. Dante saw her shoulders tense. Head up, he said softly. Easy for you to say. No, he said. Necessary for you to hear. They reached the pediatric cardiac floor just as Dr. Julian Cross walked out of the elevator at the opposite end of the corridor. His tuxedo jacket was gone. His bow tie hung loose. But his smile had returned. Smaller now. Private. Stripped of charity and cameras. 2 hospital security officers trailed behind him uncertainly. He looked at Elena first. Not Dante. Elena. You've caused quite a night, he said. Elena kept walking until Dante's hand, not touching her, only hovering near her back, reminded her she did not need to run at Julian to win. She stopped 10 feet away. Stay away from Mason. Julian smiled. Still making demands you don't have the power to enforce. I do, Dante said. Julian glanced at him. For now, but you're not his guardian. She is, and she is currently implicated in theft of confidential medical files. Elena's voice shook, but it did not break. Files that prove you were selling priority. Allegations. Stolen data. Emotional testimony from a woman under obvious distress. Julian looked down at her wrist. And no one will believe I hurt you after tonight. They'll believe you hurt yourself to build a story. Dante took one step. Elena raised her hand. Not to stop Julian. To stop Dante. She looked at Julian. And for the first time since Dante had known her, she did not look like someone trying to survive the room. She looked like someone taking it back. You always loved that word, she said. Distress. It made everything I felt sound unreliable. Elena. No. You're going to listen to me now. You used Mason because you knew I would let you hurt me before I let you hurt him. You used your patience because sick children made people too emotional to question your numbers. You used donors because rich guilt pays better than justice. And you used me because you needed a wife who made you look human. A muscle moved in Julian's jaw. Careful. Why are you going to remind me how many children need Mason's spot? The security officers exchanged a glance. Nurses had gathered at the far end of the hall. Dr. Patel stood outside Mason's room, listening. Elena's voice grew steadier. You don't want to marry me because you love me. You want me beside you because I am proof of your story. The poor secretary. The sick brother. The grateful fiancé. Your little charity miracle. Julian's face hardened. I gave you everything. You gave me fear and called it help. Without me, your brother would still be waiting. Without you manipulating the list, maybe he would have been treated honestly years ago. For the first time, Julian lost control in front of hospital staff. You ungrateful little... He reached for her. Dante caught his wrist before his fingers touched her. The movement was faster than thought, but his grip remained controlled. No crack of bone. No public brutality. Just the undeniable fact that Julian Cross' hand would go no farther. I warned you once, Dante said. Julian tried to pull free. Take your hands off me. You first. Down the hall. A woman's voice cut through the tension. Dr. Cross. Everyone turned. Doctor. Naomi Pierce walked toward them with a leather bag in one hand and a tablet in the other. She was in her 40s. Calm. Sharp-eyed. Wearing no makeup and an expression that made administrators remember they were not the highest authority in a room. Julian's face changed immediately. Naomi. You have no privileges here. Temporary emergency consult approved by the administrator 5 minutes ago. She held up the tablet, and before you threaten him, he signed it while watching the video of you threatening a pediatric patient's guardian. The administrator looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Julian's voice lowered. This is a private matter. Doctor. Pierce looked at Elena's bruised wrist, then at Mason's room, then back to Julian. It stopped being private when a child's treatment file was marked conditional. A murmur moved through the hallway. Julian's eyes flicked toward the elevator. Dante saw it. Rocco appeared behind him, blocking the path. Running, Rocco asked. I'm calling my lawyer. Julian snapped. Good. Dante said, call one who reads fast. Doctor. Pierce turned to Elena. I reviewed Mason's file on the way. His treatment was delayed twice without clear medical justification. His medication grant was flagged for administrative review 3 times after you missed foundation events. That ends tonight. I'm moving his care to an independent team. Elena stared at her. Can you do that? With your consent and the evidence I've seen? Yes. It will be messy. It will not be easy. But he will not be under Dr. Cross authority again. Elena pressed both hands to her mouth. For years, she had imagined freedom as something dramatic. A door slammed. A ring thrown. A villain defeated. In reality, Freedom sounded like a doctor saying messy but possible. Julian laughed once. Ugly and short. You think Belandi money makes this clean? The board will fight it? The foundation will deny everything. And you, Elena, will be remembered as the unstable secretary who slept her way into a mafia boss's protection. The hallway went silent. Dante's face darkened, but Elena stepped forward before he could speak. She removed the engagement ring from her finger slowly. Her hand trembled, but she did it. The diamond caught the hospital lights, cold and perfect. I didn't sleep my way into anything, she said. I worked. I endured. I stayed quiet because I thought silence was the price of Mason's life. And I loved someone I thought I could never choose, because choosing him would make you punish my brother. Julian's eyes sharpened. Dante stopped breathing. Elena turned slightly, not fully facing Dante, because if she did, she might lose courage. Yes, she said. Softer now. I loved him. Before tonight, before he saw the bruises, before he knew anything, I loved him because he never made me feel small for being careful. Because he sent cars in the rain and pretended it was policy. Because he never asked for more than I could give. Because he stayed on his side of every line even when I wished he wouldn't. Dante's control finally cracked. Not into anger. Into something far more dangerous to him. Hope. Julian stared at them, both with hatred. How touching. Elena looked back at him. And I stayed with you because you held Mason's heartbeat in one hand and my reputation in the other. That was not love. That was a hostage situation dressed as an engagement. She placed the ring on the nurse cessation counter. The sound it made was tiny. Everyone heard it. I'm done. Julian lunged for the ring, or for her. No one knew which. Rocco moved first, catching him by the arms and turning him hard against the wall. Two hospital security officers finally found the courage to assist. You can do this, Julian shouted. I am Dr. Julian Cross. Doctor. Pierce's voice was flat. Not anymore. Federal agents arrived 9 minutes later. Not with sirens. Not with drama. With badges. Sealed evidence bags. And the quiet efficiency of people who had been waiting for the right file to open the right door. Dante had not created the investigation out of nothing. Julian's enemies had existed for years. Nurses who had been silenced. Families who had been priced out. Doctors who had suspected but lacked proof. One former fiancé who had vanished from public life after Julian called her unstable in exactly the same way he had tried to destroy Elena. What Dante had done was connect them, protect them, and make sure the proof could not be buried before morning. Celeste Arden was taken aside in the lobby after Marco traced complaint dismissals to her office. She did not scream. She did not faint. She simply turned gray and said, Do you understand what this will do to the hospital? Elena, standing near Mason's door, answered before Dante could. Maybe it will make it a hospital again. Celeste looked at her with resentment. Then something, almost like shame. You don't know how many donations depend on men like him. Elena's voice was quiet. I know how many children did. That ended the conversation. Julian was escorted past them in handcuffs. Still trying to stand tall. Still trying to make disgrace look temporary. When he passed Elena, he stopped. The agents held him. But he leaned just enough to speak. He won't keep you, he whispered. Men like Dante Belandi don't love women like you. They protect broken things until they get bored. For 1 second, the old poison searched for a way back into her blood. Then Dante spoke behind her. Elena. She turned. He was not looking at Julian. He was looking at her. Do not let a man in chains tell you what freedom looks like. Julian's face twisted as the agents pulled him away. The elevator doors closed on him. For the first time in months, Elena took a breath that did not belong to fear. Mason was awake when she returned to his room. His eyes were tired, but bright. His stuffed fox tucked under his chin. "Is Dr. Julian mad?" he asked. Elena sat beside him and took his hand. "Yes." "At me." "Never at you." Mason looked past her at Dante, standing respectfully near the door. "Is he the rain car man?" Elena froze. Dante's eyebrow lifted slightly. "The what?" Mason smiled weakly. Elena said her boss sends cars when it rains because of company policy. But the company didn't send Mrs. Brooks a car when it rained. Elena closed her eyes. "Mason." Dante's mouth curved faintly. The first real, almost smile of the night. "Your sister is very observant," he said. "But apparently so are you." Mason studied him with a seriousness that made him seem older than 11. "Do you like her?" Elena made a strangled sound. "Mason. Harper." Dante did not laugh. He walked closer, stopping at the foot of the bed. "Yes," he said. "Very much." Mason nodded, as if confirming a suspicion. "Good. She needs someone who doesn't yell." The simplicity of it nearly undid Elena. Dante's voice softened. "I do not intend to yell at her or make her cry. If she cries because of me," Dante said, "I will deserve whatever she does next." Mason looked satisfied. "Okay. You can sit." Elena stared at her brother. "You were giving permission now." "Somebody has to." Dante sat in the chair on the other side of the bed, not near enough to crowd Elena, close enough to be present. For a while, there was only the beeping of monitors and the quiet movement of nurses. "Doctor." Pierce came in to explain the transfer of care. Mason would need more testing, a revised treatment plan, and likely surgery sooner than Julian had allowed. None of it was simple. None of it was magically solved. But hope no longer sounded like something sold at a gala. It sounded like a plan. At 3 in the morning, Mason finally slept. Elena stepped into the hallway, exhausted beyond tears. Dante followed after a moment. The hospital had gone quiet, washed in blue light and the distant hum of machines. Elena leaned against the wall and looked at her bare ring finger. "I don't know what happens now." Dante stood beside her, leaving space. "Now you sleep. After that, Mason gets care. Julian faces what he did. Celeste and the board answer for what they hid. And me." He looked at her then. "You choose." She gave a tired laugh. "That sounds generous." "It is not generosity. It is repair." "Repair for what?" "For every powerful man who made choice feel like a trick." Elena's eyes filled. "Including you." The question was quiet. "Brave." Dante took it like he deserved it. "If I ever do." "Yes." She looked down the hall toward Mason's room. "I can't go from belonging to Julian's story to belonging to yours." "I know. People will say I used you. People say many things when truth makes them uncomfortable. You don't care. I care what you believe." She finally looked at him. "What if I don't know yet?" His voice was steady. His eyes were not. "Then I wait." "Dante. I loved you enough to stay silent when I thought silence protected you," he said. "Now I will love you enough to wait until your choice is free." Tears slipped down her face. This time she did not hide them. She was too tired to perform strength and too free. Suddenly, to apologize for being wounded. Dante lifted his hand slightly, stopping before touching her cheek. "May I?" She closed her eyes and nodded. His thumb brushed one tear away. Gentle as a vow he had no right to make yet. The touch was small. It shook them both. Morning came pale and cold over San Francisco. By then, Julian Cross' face was on every news screen in the hospital lobby, no longer framed by words like miracle or hero, but by investigation, patient list manipulation, foundation, misconduct, and alleged abuse of power. Dante made sure Elena did not see the worst of it. Not because he thought she was fragile, because she had earned a few hours where Julian's name was not the loudest thing in her life. Mason was stable. Doctor. Pierce had already spoken to 2 specialists. Nurse Mara brought Elena coffee and a muffin she did not ask for but desperately needed. Rocco stationed men far enough from Mason's room not to frighten him and close enough that no one entered without being checked. At 8 o'clock, Dante's driver took Elena home to change while Dante stayed at the hospital with Mason's permission. Don't let him touch the pudding. Mason warned. That's mine. Understood, Dante said solemnly. Elena went home and stood in her tiny apartment for 15 minutes without moving. Julian's gifts were everywhere once she knew how to look. The framed gala photo. The expensive coat he chose because he hated the one she had bought herself. The white engagement party dress still hanging in plastic. The hospital pamphlets. The reminders. The invisible strings. She took a trash bag and filled it slowly. Not in rage. In release. At the bottom of her desk drawer, she found the first note Dante had ever left her. It had been written on a meeting agenda after she skipped lunch during a brutal merger week. Eat before the room eats you alive. D. B. She had kept it folded behind her passport for 9 months. She touched the paper once, then placed it in her bag. When she returned to Belandi Tower that afternoon, the ballroom was empty. The flowers looked tired. The stage had been cleared. Workers moved silently, removing banners with Julian's name. Elena rode the private elevator to the executive floor, wearing a simple gray sweater. No ring. No makeup over the faint bruise near her collar because she no longer had the strength or shame to hide it. Dante was at the hospital, but on his desk, waiting for her, was a white envelope with her name on it. Inside was a resignation letter, already written, already dated, unsigned. Beneath it was a note in Dante's handwriting. If staying feels like another cage, leave. If leaving feels like fear, stay. Either way, choose for yourself. Elena read it twice. Then she sat in his chair, took his pen, and wrote one line at the bottom of the resignation letter. She folded it, placed it back in the envelope, and left it in the center of his desk. Dante returned 10 minutes later and found her gone. For one terrible second, the air left him. He opened the envelope slowly, already preparing himself to accept the first choice she had made freely, even if it took her away from him. The resignation letter was blank except for the line she had written. Coffee at 8. No locked doors. Dunt stared at it. Something in his chest that had been clenched for years finally loosened. The next morning, at exactly 8:00, Elena stood outside his office holding 2 coffees. She did not knock at first. Through the glass wall, Dante saw her and rose immediately. He reached for the door, then stopped, waited. Elena noticed. A small smile touched her mouth. Tired, but real. She knocked once. Come in, he said from inside. She shook her head. No. His brows lifted. She held his coffee up. You come out. For a moment, the most dangerous man in San Francisco stood in the center of the office, where men, twice Elena's size, had learned to fear him. Then Dante Belandi smiled. He opened the door and stepped into the hallway, not pulling her into his room, not asking her to enter his world, meeting her where she had chosen to stand. Elena handed him the coffee. Their fingers brushed. Neither rushed. Neither claimed. Behind them, the city kept moving. Scandals kept breaking. Enemies kept calling. Somewhere in the hospital, Mason texted Elena a photo of his untouched pudding cup with the warning, "Tell the rain car man watching him." Elena laughed. Dante looked at her as if that sound was worth every war waiting outside the glass. She looked back at him. Not healed. Not finished. Not suddenly unafraid, but free enough to stand still. For months, Julian Cross had taught her that love was a locked room, a signed form, a hand on her wrist, a threat dressed as care. Dante did not ask her to walk into his room. He walked out of it. And for the first time in her life, Elena Harper understood that the safest door was not the one a powerful man opened for her. It was the one he waited outside until she chose to turn the handle herself.